Hi, this is Richard Barrett for Guitarist Magazine, welcoming you to another Blues Headlines. This time I've gone for what I think of as a modern blues approach, certainly with a tip of the hat to Joe Bonamassa, maybe a little bit of Eric Johnson. So let's have a listen to the solo and I'll be back to talk you through it. As you'll have just seen and heard, there's quite a lot in this. I've mixed more traditional blues approach, though with quite high gain, with more modern, in a blues context, arpeggios and brushing across the strings. Not sweep picking, but there are some more specialist picking techniques. So there's quite a lot to talk through, so we'd best get on with it. Example 1 is based exclusively around the shape 1 E minor pentatonic with a couple of additions. Some of those are duplicate notes. We've all seen that, but what I've done is I've added and actually, if memory serves, I've added in there as well. So those F sharps give it a ninth, which is a little bit more jazzy and complex, and it fits great over a kind of not major or minor backing, such as the riff-based track that I've done. So let me talk you through the thinking behind it rather than note for note through the lick, or we'll be here all day really. So I've played little fumble there, never mind, shows it's live. So you can see that there's a lot of repetition. I think it's more important to have an understanding about how to use this pattern than it is necessarily to duplicate what I played, though there is a transcription in the magazine. So let me run through it once more. One thing that I'd really like to nail, though, is such a Bonamassa and Eric Johnson thing, is this. To go down the bottom 6 notes and then come back up an octave. And it's a good exercise, and as you can hear, I'm not absolutely muting that, so there's a little bit of dissonance against that low E. All makes it more bluesy, more authentic. Having worked your way through that pentatonic pattern, there's just a very simple little tag at the end. I'd just like to talk about your options there as well, because obviously the run with its, loads of notes, there are various ways you can do that. And there are a few ways you can do a simple little phrase like this as well. And I tend to lean towards doing a double stop. Quite like that as well. So you could regard that as a little bonus lick. So for this one, we're staying with the same pentatonic box, that E minor shape 1 pentatonic, with a couple of notes stressed here and a C sharp added in as well. We've got an A chord happening underneath, so C sharp's the major third. It's not really that calculated, but there's a kind of happening underneath, so I feel that I can be major for a moment. Once we get back to E, I want to become a bit more ambiguous and bluesy again. But let's talk through the lick. Essentially, a couple of high bent notes, a bit of a flurry, the kind of Eric Johnson Bonamassa lick at the end, which I'll walk you through, and then a more of a funky sort of feel, and then I'm preparing for the next lick, which is a bit of a handful. So let's go through roughly what's happening here. I'm actually getting ahead of myself. There's a lead in. So it's going down in sixes down the pentatonic, so I can talk you through that literally. I'm not doing any sort of fancy sweepy type stuff. I'll run through that once more. Okay, so that's going through it. It's alternate picked. Then we go into the more funky. I think that's pretty much exactly what I played on the solo. As daft as it may sound, you sometimes can play things spontaneously within a certain framework, vocabulary, if you like. So there are a couple of ways that I could cover that territory. So let me demonstrate a couple of things just to give you an insight into the thought process. It really is mostly about that double stop bend lick. And the rest of the time I'm being kind of funky, I'm filling the time, I want something happening. It doesn't need to be super melodic. I'm looking for something that's got more of a rhythmic vibe, really, than a melodic vibe. Example 3 is more of a set piece, though there are a lot of notes in it. So I would suggest that you can go back and watch the video lots of times. That's the luxury of YouTube. Or if you have a look in Guitarist Issue 521, then there will be a note-for-note transcription with the pick strokes. However, I'm going to be a little bit more helpful than that. I'll talk you through the shapes and some of the thinking behind the picking, because this is a mixture of brushing across the strings. I hesitate to say sweep picking because this isn't shred. But there's a certain amount of brushing across in one continuous movement while fingering an arpeggio type shape. And there is a little bit of alternate picking as well. So let me show you the shapes. Essentially, there are 4 chords in this section, a bar of each. There's a G major, an A major, a C major, and a D major. The D major, we're kind of back out into more of a pentatonic thing. We've had enough of the flurry by then, and it's time for a change. But the G shape that I've used here, it's, like I say, brushing right across the strings with one exception where I'm going to do a hammer on this 4th string. So. Okay, that's the idea here. You can see I'm framing a G chord and then I'm going into this stretched. Now you will notice that there are a couple of times when I've reused my second finger, my middle finger here, because it just seems to make more sense. I can do it more quickly, otherwise you get a tangled up mess. Okay, so that's the G shape, and that's coming out of that into the A. For the A, I've used an F sharp minor pentatonic, shape 1. Now, pretty much alternate picked, though there is a skip over from the G third to the B second string, and I've used a single stroke for that and then resumed alternate picking. In fact, I've done that a couple of times there. So when you're playing down a pentatonic, you can fold back over and repeat notes from the string before. And when I'm doing that, I like to do it with one pick stroke, which is how players like Joe Bonamassa and Eric Johnson get that kind of fluid, kind of picked sound, which is a bit like an arpeggio, though it isn't. This is a scale in this case. So bear that in mind. And once again, if you want to see exactly what's played, it's going to be in issue 521. Now I come down that F sharp minor pentatonic over the A chord and I time it so that I can. Okay, so to really exaggerate that, that's down to a C natural instead of the C sharp, and that's meant to nail beat 1 of the C major chord. And this is where I start being a little bit less fancy pants about the whole thing, but that's pretty pretty much exactly it. I'll go through it once more. Here it ends with a kind of blues lick. So that's 1. So there's an upstroke when I get to that G. And that's taking us towards example 4. So let's go there. So for this final example, I've realised that I haven't really stretched beyond this little territory of the fretboard here between the 12th and the 17th. And the same is true of this final lick here. We are shape 1, E minor pentatonic. And then I'm coming out into shape 2 to finish off with a high bend. You know, that's how you're supposed to end these solos, right? So, started this lick very much the way I've started the very first lick. Try to be a little bit rhythmic and kind of funky about the phrasing. The rhythm's really important. And then I am mindful of the fact that I want to start working my way up for that climax at the end. So that's a very rough approximation of what I did. So let me just play slowly through that kind of thing again, and you can see the inner workings of it. In fact, I'm realising just as I'm showing you that quite a lot of the time there will be certain little passages where I'll flatten a finger and then roll it back again, just to give me the flexibility to come out of it. So something like that could be worth spending a little bit of time on as an isolated exercise. So there we have it. I hope that that's been helpful. As I say, these talk-throughs are really designed to be referred to in conjunction with the transcription, but I am able to kind of go a little bit more off-piste and give you some extra ideas. So let's have a few words about tone. Central to everything is a vintage Les Paul. Well, it's vintage to me. 50s Les Paul is a bit beyond my budget, but this lovely 76 turns out to be just the ticket for this kind of thing. That's plugged into the studio's JTM 45 Mark II reissue. And of course, to get a little bit more gain and focus the mids, I've used my trusty Boss Super Overdrive. So there we have it. We'll have another listen to that now, but as a final word, let me just encourage you to play through those shapes and patterns and see what you find as well, because sometimes copying another lick or learning another lick note for note can really be quite difficult to do. And I found that even if I'm trying to copy what I played spontaneously, suddenly I think, what was I, some kind of genius that day or something? So don't be discouraged if you're not finding that you're duplicating what I've done or what anyone else has done, but hopefully these licks and patterns will be useful. Hope you enjoy. See you next time.